Chair, Conference President. Paul Mooney, Unite the Union. Last time delegate, last time speaker. This motion is calling for modernisation in the employment injuries claims process. Workplace injuries and benefit claims is something that unions, everybody in this hall, has all been involved with. We've always done it in conjunction with our lawyers, and we've been doing it for a long, long time for the sake of our members. The current system is based mainly on traditional male-dominated heavy industries. The system fails to cover many injuries and diseases experienced by workers in the 21st century. The model of work has changed significantly over the last 77 years. It's because of these changes we need a Scottish Employment Injury Board to oversee issues with the modern Scottish workplace and recognise the illnesses and diseases that workers actually are experiencing today. We also need to reflect the changes in the make-up of our workforce, particularly when we take into regard the gender and ethnicity and the specific issues of the different workforce that we've got today compared to what we had in the past. This present model we've got today does not recognise the things that we recognise today. As this benefit developed, it is vital that there is a Scottish Council that will deal with this. As I mentioned at the start, trade unions have always been at the heart of injuries and claims and diseases fighting for our members. We've got to be amongst that, and we've got to keep going. We are the people in this hall, within our unions, that know the risks that our members face on a daily basis. Women make up a sizeable proportion of the labour market, yet only a fraction of the claims for industrial injuries are made by women. I don't think this reflects a reality of injuries or accidents at work. Now, I've listened over the past 2 days to our education comrades telling us about violence at work. This needs to start coming through. We need to start looking at injuries for violence for teachers and education. We need action, we need it now. So we can begin to process identifying new industrial diseases and injuries that the workers are actually facing out there. This would include recognising long COVID as an industrial disease. The decision of the HSE to classify COVID as a primarily community-based transmission was wrong, and it has allowed employers to get off the hook despite clear evidence that COVID was contracted by many at work. This motion calls and underlines Unite's belief that long COVID should be reclassified as a workplace transmittable disease. Unite believes that if a Scottish Employer Industries Advisory Council was in place prior to COVID-19, this could have limited the spread and probably saved thousands of lives. Existing legislation around health and safety needs to be strengthened. As powerful as the legislation is, there is not enough focus on the health, and we've said this before in these conferences, health needs to be very part of health and safety. Congress, I'll finish by saying that guidelines need to be clearer and strengthened. We need to make sure injuries and accidents at work and an independent employment injury council formed that has a prominent trade union presence at the heart of it to ensure that workers are protected at all times. I move for the last time.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you for all of your previous commitment and engagement with Congress. Do we have a seconder?
President, Congress, Fiona MacDonald Johnson in support of motion 52. We agree that Scottish Employment Injuries Advisory Council should be established and separate from the one in England. Welcoming Mark Griffin's proposal to include unions in amongst the various other researchers and advisors that would be sitting on the council. The proposal would help a various range of people who can work either with difficulty or no longer work at all due to accidents, disease, and would hopefully also include COVID-19 and long COVID. But we must stress that the equality must be adhered to and that any discrimination must also be eradicated from the Council, therefore making sure that there is fairness for all. Congress, we must continue to stand together and give Mark all the support that we can get to get this proposal amended and pushed through so that everyone in Scotland has a fair representation to get the benefits that they deserve for injuries that they have sustained or the diseases that have caused a lifetime of irreversible symptoms. A PI claim only lasts for a short time, not a lifetime.
Thank you, colleague. I now call for any other supporting or opposing speakers. No. That was motion 52, modernising the industrial injuries claims process. Please note that the General Counsel recommends support, and I will now move to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? Motion 52, modernising the industrial injuries claims process, is carried. I now move to composite H, preventing and tackling sexual harassment in the workplace, covering motions 53, 54, 56 and 85, and I invite Usdaw to move this composite motion.
Congress, Kelly Burr moving composite motion H on behalf of Usdaw. For decades, the problem of sexual harassment in the workplace has been hidden from view. It wasn't acknowledged or discussed, with women simply expected to put up with it and to keep quiet. Although anyone can experience sexual harassment, we know that women and young workers are overwhelmingly the survivors of harassment. The fact that any worker has to put up with verbal or physical abuse in the workplace, or with any behaviours that belittle, humiliate or undermine them, is appalling. My union refuses to accept this, as I'm sure yours do too. This is why, as a movement, we must continue to talk about it, and we must continue to reinforce the message that sexual harassment is not inevitable, it can be prevented. Through practical action to protect workers and members against harassment, we can change our workplaces. Every worker should be safe at work. The STUC's own research in this area highlights the scale and extent of the issue across Scotland. It also highlights why legislation is crucial in tackling this issue, because despite increased awareness, sexual harassment in the last year is every bit as endemic as it has been for decades before. When surveying Usdaw members, we found that 7 in 10 women have experienced some form of sexual harassment in the workplace, and most did not tell their employer. This is a shocking statistic, and let's be clear, the impacts are huge. Sexual harassment limits how we live our lives, it restricts where and when we go out, and the damaging stereotypes that give rise to sexual harassment limits our educational choices, our career opportunities, and our ability to live our lives as we want to live them. After many years of collective campaigning, the introduction of the new preventative duty is a crucial step forward, placing the responsibility on employers to be proactive in protecting staff from sexual harassment at work. It means that, amongst other things, employers must create workplaces where workers feel safe, workplaces where workers can report concerns and be confident that when they do, these matters will be dealt with properly. While this is welcome, along with the new enforcement role for the Equalities and Human Rights Commission, legislation and policy alone are not enough. Trade unions must hold employers to account. Reps play a critical role in this. I've seen firsthand through my own union's workplace sexual harassment campaign, Call It Out, how we can really make a difference. Reps that have run the campaign in their workplace say that it helps to make the issue of sexual harassment more visible, and it shows managers that there is an issue so they can no longer brush it under the carpet. Campaign days give members confidence so that they know that the union is on their side, that if they speak up about sexual harassment, they will be believed and they will be supported. And we know that members who talk to their rep report a much better outcome than members who just tell their employer. It's clear by working together as a movement, we can make a real difference in both preventing and tackling sexual harassment in the workplace. I move. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. I now call on the Bakers Union to second the composite.
Congress, Sarah Woolley, speaking on behalf of the Bakers Food and Allied Workers Union, proudly here to second this essential composite, particularly our contribution towards it. You know, we commend the STUC Women's Committee for their powerful report, Silence is Compliance and Still Silent, which has highlighted the ongoing issues of sexual harassment in workplaces, not only in Scotland, but beyond too. Our members at McDonald's have courageously exposed the deep-rooted toxic culture of sexual harassment and violence within the fast food industry. Their bravery underlines the need for the urgent need for robust legislative protection for workers. But we know legislation alone won't solve everything, though it's a critical step to compel employers to proactively address, report and eliminate harassment. We are pushing for a proposal to introduce a RIDOR-style reporting system for sexual harassment, ensuring transparency and accountability from employers. Crucially, this has got to include protections for anonymity, support mechanisms for workers and meaningful involvement from trade unions. Removing restrictive reporting timelines is absolutely vital because, as we know, justice should never be time-barred by fear or by trauma. We also warmly welcome mandatory education and comprehensive training initiatives. These must target not just workplaces, but also tackle the underlying cultural attitudes fueling harassment. Education that specifically engages men in understanding and changing harmful behaviours is crucial, as is education that empowers bystanders to be active and survivors to come forward. Because let's be clear, sexual harassment is violence, and it must never be tolerated or dismissed in any workplace, including those within our trade union movement. The End Not Defend campaign that we have launched, along with a number of other trade unions in the room and wider movement, outlines the steps that are needed to change these cultures and measures in place so that all employers are held accountable and all workers are protected. Please get involved in that and please support the motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. I now call on Aegis to speak in support of the composite motion.
President, Congress, Ricky Markham, Aegis the Union, speaking in support of the motion. Congress, it's well understood that sexual harassment is predominantly experienced by women, with a significant majority of cases perpetrated by men. The issue is significant and urgent. For every day of complacency, every girl and woman in society is put at risk of preventable abuse and harassment. There's no singular remedy, but the steps we can take must be taken. I recently supported a young female member whose experience of sexual harassment at work impacted every aspect of her personal and work life. The perpetrator was an older male colleague who made advances and would not take no for an answer, demanding that she explain herself to him, moving to a desk facing hers, questioning her movements around the office and her relationships with other male colleagues, gaslighting her about the negative impact of her behaviour, that her behaviour was having on him, bombarding her with emails, texts and phone calls. Thankfully, this young woman had the courage to approach her union for guidance, and we took the steps to support her through the process of bringing the harassment to an end. But it should never have come down to her having to do anything at all. Not only were his advances highly inappropriate in the first place, the situation should have ended right at the beginning when she said no. Congress, we must make changes to our workplace practices, starting with implementing mandatory education programmes, with educational initiatives aimed at men to promote respectful behaviour and understanding of sexual harassment, comprehensive training, active policy management, and many more. These are but a few. Congress, please support the motion.
Thank you, Ricky. I now call on the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy to speak in support of the composite motion.
Good afternoon, Congress. Fiona McKellar, CSP. Congress, sexual harassment is by its definition degrading, offensive, unwarranted and discriminatory. I was looking through this year's programme and it made me think. I noted 44 of the trade unions affiliated with STUC this year, 24 have 50% of their membership women. And so just think, in totality these unions have nearly 550,000 members. That's over 270,000 women. It's a significant number that could be affected by sexual harassment. I mention this as Congress is also aware reports show our movement is unfortunately not entirely devoid of these behaviours too. We commend the work of STUC Women's Committee addressing sexual harassment, but are also dismayed to see that things haven't changed in the short years between the reports. Sexual harassment continues to ruin the lives of women today. Sadly, I have examples of members' experiences of sexual harassment. A new graduate
whose manager asked her if her boyfriend would object to her moving away for her job. Another who was subjected to a patient's sexual innuendos when she informed him his joint was stiff. I'll leave that one to your imagination. Another having sexual comments made in the fit of her uniform, and another, in the midst of an overwhelming flush, was winked at and told by a senior manager, "We all know you're hot." All of these were in the not too distant past. Women should not have to tolerate this. We should feel safe at work. Employers have a duty of care to their employees. Trade unions have a duty of care to our activists. We need to call this out. We must hold employers to account. Please, we must work collaboratively across our unions. We must not only talk the talk, but make employers and Scottish Government walk the walk. Please support.
Thank you, Fiona. I now call for any other supporting or opposing speakers.
Good afternoon, Congress. Carmen Sullivan from EIS. As a young women teacher, I know all too well that sexual harassment is a reality that too many people face in schools. The EIS is very concerned to observe a rise in casualised misogynistic attitudes amongst children and young people, and a normalisation of extremist misogynistic views, which is evident in almost 40% of EIS branches reporting that an increase in prejudice-based violent and aggressive incidents. Our profession has over 80% women. I have witnessed and heard stories from my women colleagues, friends and pupils feeling that they are having to endure sexual harassment, that it's just the way it is. Too often it goes unspoken and unchallenged, leaving people feeling vulnerable, isolated and powerless. Sexual harassment and misogyny exist as a cause and consequence of women's inequality. I am passionate about this because harassment is crucial if we have to have an equal and fair workplaces. We cannot accept sexual harassment as banter, flirting or just a joke. Please support this.
Thank you, colleague. Next speaker, please.
Hello, Lena Van Green speaking for UCU Scotland. I wanted to thank the unions who brought this motion. I wanted also to support it, specifically on two accounts. First of all, I wanted to mention the Charter Society of Physiotherapy and the mention of sexual harassment within the unions. This is much too prevalent, and it happens in this room as well. Sexual harassment is not something that we can step away from, that we can leave when we go into our union spaces. It is in our union spaces. And I have attended training for reps in which I've heard horrific victim blaming and rape culture kind of jokes and excuses going on. So we have to address this within our union as well. I also wanted to mention, my second thing is to mention that, of course, not all women or other people are at equal risk of sexual harassment, sexual violence, and other forms of harassment. Job security is crucial here. If you are a young worker, if you are an insecurely employed worker, just as if you are a black worker, if you are a disabled worker, you are at more risk of harm, you are at more risk of harassment at work. So there is an intersectional framing of this, and one of the key findings of the TUC report from 2016 on sexual harassment in the workplace was that we need job security now to address this problem as well. Thank you.
Thank you, colleague. Next speaker, please.
Congress, Ben Selby, Fire Brigade Union, supporting the composite. And President, like the last speaker, I'm going to focus on paragraph 5 within the composite. In the Fire Brigade Union, we commissioned an independent review of sexual harassment prevalent within our union. I want to pay tribute to all the women that contributed to the report's findings, and I also want to apologise for them, for the actions of men, mostly men, that they were subjected to. Behaviours such as sexual harassment, discrimination and victimisation have no place in fire stations, within the Fire Brigade Union, any workplace or any trade union. Comrades, if we're true to our movement's values, we'll stand together. We must continue to challenge and, yes, where appropriate, we must educate. However, comrades, we also need to act. We need to boot out all those that seek to divide us and kick out those that perpetrate acts of sexual harassment. Comrades, this will be hard. It will put targets on our backs, but if we truly believe In solidarity and unity, we must clean our unions before making demands on employers. I urge fellow senior colleagues in the room to make this a high priority, and I urge reps and officials right across the movement to be the change you want to see. Be the challenge and be the fight to eradicate sexual harassment. No trade union in this room worth their salt could consider voting against this composite. President, comrades, we've never won anything without fighting together. We've never been handed a better workplace without having to fight for it. So let's join together in the fight to eradicate sexual harassment. I move. Solidarity.
Thank you, Ben. Next speaker, please.
Congress Chair, Cheryl Gobbin here from the STUC Black Workers Conference. Didn't plan to speak on this, so I will be quick. I do consider myself well educated, but it was only last month when I attended TUC Black Workers Conference. That's when I realised that I have experienced misogynoir. I worked at cost cutters when I was a teenager, summer jobs here and there in Bolton, and even work recently. A colleague described his fascination with Indian ladies on Teams. I'm kind of fascinated why someone 16 years older than me has the audacity. As Lena said earlier, the intersection of race and gender, disability, LGBT status, all these things, migrant status, everything, is all so important. Allies, please make the safe spaces for those on the receiving end feel comfortable enough to come to you. I don't want to hear motions on this for years to come. This isn't my last conference, I imagine. And we all have our part to play. We all have our part to play there to get there. I don't know what I'm saying. Please support the composite. Thank you so much.
Thank you, comrade. Next speaker.
Hi there, Kim Glanders, NESWT, and I am even less prepared than Cheryl. I wanted to speak about this from the perspective of women in the LGBT plus community. We are even more likely to experience sexual harassment than a straight cis woman. We are fetishized, we are porn categories, and it is shocking what we will experience. They speak about it as if it is completely normal. I once went to my line manager to speak about an issue where a pupil had attempted to out me in front of the class, and instead of it being taken seriously, I was asked what my favourite sexual position with a woman was. Sexual harassment as a woman is shocking. What we experience every day from men everywhere is shocking. But from a woman in the LGBT plus community, I can say that all of us in that community, we are more attacked. And it's the same as what Cheryl was saying, about people with all these protected characteristics. It's intersectionality of it. But it's something that we need to make sure is a focus within this as well, because it's scary. Please support the composite. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. I don't see any more speakers, so that was Composite H, Preventing and Tackling Sexual Harassment in the Workplace. Please note that the General Council recommends support, and I will now move to the vote. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? That's carried unanimously. Composite H, Preventing and Tackling Sexual Harassment in the Workplace, is carried unanimously. I now call amended motion 55, Women's Safety Travelling to and from Work, and I invite Equity to move the amended motion.
Chair, Congress, Kirsty Miller, Equity, proposing amended motion 55, Women's Safety Travelling to and from Work. Travelling safely to and from work shouldn't be an optional extra or incur additional costs. But many workers in the performing arts, women, LGBT+ and workers from the global majority are often exposed to unsafe journeys, as are workers in healthcare, hospitality, retail and emergency services. Freelancers are often paid well after the job is done and do not have the finances to splurge on taxis or Ubers to get safely home. The cost of living crisis has intensified these issues. Many workers, particularly those in low-paid or precarious employment, also cannot afford alternatives like taxis or ride shares. Consequently, they are often left with no choice but to navigate unsafe environments, increasing their vulnerability to harassment and assault. The lack of safe, reliable and accessible public transport with staff on hand to assist is surely something in the 21st century we should all have access to, seeing as we didn't get the hover cars we were promised by the Jetsons and Blade Runner. A 2023 Transport Scotland study found that 1/3 of women feel unsafe on public transport, with many reporting a constant state of vigilance, especially after dark. This sense of insecurity leads many to alter their behaviour, such as sitting near drivers, avoiding certain routes, or refraining from travel altogether at night to mitigate perceived threats. British Transport Police data revealed 63 reports of sexual assaults on ScotRail trains between 2017 and 2021, highlighting the tangible risks present on our transport networks. And we all know sexual assault is underreported, so these figures will be higher. The potential danger for performers doesn't end with the journey itself. One Equity member has spoken about travelling home in public transport and having forgotten to take their lanyard, someone spotting it, and subsequently the person came to their place of work and followed them to their home. This went on for months. The mental and emotional toll of not being able to feel safe when returning home after a day of work because of the fear of what could happen is not something we should expect any worker to endure. Yesterday, we voted in solidarity to keep ticket offices open and support the growth of Scotland's railways. And the issues these motions highlighted, lack of conductors, lack of manned ticket offices after a certain time, lack of adequate lighting while waiting for transport, are all part of the same problem. We are all here fighting for safety and dignity at work. Let's also fight for the same travelling to and from work. Congress, I move.
Thank you, Kirsty. Now call on Unison to second the amended motion, please.
Brenda Aitchison, Unison, seconding motion 55. Unison's amendment may well rank as one of the shortest ever. It adds just 7 words to the bullet point 3, in line with STUC Safe Home campaign in relation to late night transport. The key issue of the campaign is that workplaces which have workers who require to work unsocial hours should provide safe transport home for those workers at the end of their shift. And in addition, it calls on local authorities who have to have safe home policies as a licensing condition for premises which operate throughout their council region. Employers have a duty of care, and this is a health and safety issue. Post-pandemic has made public transport more unreliable, more costly, and quite often less safe. These workers perform essential services across many different occupations, and their well-being should never be compromised. Please support.
There we go. Try with the mic on, shall I? Thanks, Brenda. I now call on Usdaw to speak in support of the amended motion.
President, Congress, Stephanie Queen supporting the motion on women's safety, travelling to and from work on behalf of my union, Usdaw. Health and safety has always been a key priority for our movement, but this motion flags up an important gap in protections for workers when it comes to travelling to and from work. We know from speaking to our members that travelling to and from work can be a real concern. Of course, we know this issue can impact any worker, but it's clear that for women there are more serious concerns around personal safety. Usdaw has been highlighting this issue for a number of years through our Safe Journeys to Work campaign, and research for our campaign has highlighted that women are twice as likely to feel unsafe on their way to work than men, and this is due to a variety of reasons. Women frequently voice concerns around travelling in winter. Dark nights, dark mornings bring worries around dark car parks, bad street lighting and remote off-site parking. Research also shows that women are far more likely to use public transport. Shockingly, research by Susie Lamplow Trust found that 97% of women had experienced unwanted behaviours on public transport in the last 5 years. This is shocking statistics. That's not to say that public transport is not safe. We know that millions of journeys are made safely on public transport across Scotland each year. But that doesn't negate the experiences of women across Scotland who simply do not feel safe on their journeys to and from work, which is why, as a movement, we need to continue to campaign on this issue, because there are a number of practical measures that employers and government can take to improve safety, including improved public transport, better street lighting, as well as fixed shift pattern. The list goes on. And while these actions are relatively straightforward, they can make a huge difference, helping to make sure that women feel safe, not just when at work, but on their way to and from work. Please support. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Call on the RMT to speak in support.
Afternoon, Georgina Holmes, RMT. As highlighted, there are certain groups of passengers, including women and girls, who feel at risk when travelling on public transport, especially late at night when it's likely that there will be less staff present. RMT has long-standing concerns about the occurrence of violent and antisocial behaviour on Scotland's rail network, affecting both staff and passengers. Tackling this issue nationally is a priority for the RMT. BTP figures published highlight an increase in violent crime on the Scottish rail network compared to before the pandemic. Our amendment highlights the Scottish Government's own research, Women and Girls' Safety, published in 2023, found that they felt safer travelling when there were staff in stations, in ticket offices and on train, and recommended the Scottish Government look at increasing staff levels. RMT believes that there should be an expansion of staffing across the rail network. We believe the UK Government plans for the GBR should include a regulation of staffing levels on trains and in stations, in addition to ticket offices. We are concerned that the policies pursued by the Scottish Government, like cuts to ticket offices, the 2024 attempt to extend driver-only operation on the Barla headline, which was defeated by the RMT, are at odds with the needs to make the railway safer for passengers and staff. RMT is supportive of the creation of a specific offence of abusing and assaulting a public transport worker. In Scotland, this is a devolved matter, as legislation exists for the blue light and retail sectors. In correspondence to Katie Clark MSP, the Scottish Government has previously said the protection of workers in the Retail and Age-Restricted Goods and Services Scotland Act 2021 would apply to public transport workers involved in retailing, tickets and catering, but further correspondence and meetings since then have not been clear. The RMT has continued to pursue this issue. We believe the Scottish Government should legislate to afford the protections to all transport workers. Thank you.
Thank you, colleague. I now call for any other supporting or opposing speakers.
Sean McNamara, North Lanarkshire Trades Council. Transport and organising local transport is something that regularly comes up in our North Lanarkshire Trades Council meetings. It's something that affects all workers and is a crucial area of development that needs to take place. In North Lanarkshire, we have the Better Buses campaign, which is a community-led campaign of people trying to pull together to organise something that serves our communities. I think this is a really important opportunity for political education and engaging with the wider public. As we've discussed previously, people look for answers to problems in society, and that is often seen as a lurch, or can come to pass as a lurch to the right. And we have an answer to this here. We can build something that is positive for our communities, that serves our communities, that engages them, and something that I've been a part of with the STUC is the cost of living training that they put on, which is all about campaigning, organising and political education. So I think it's really important that we support this motion and try to bring in community groups and provide political education that can bring them into our movement. Thank you. Support the motion.
Thank you, Sean. Next speaker, please.
Ronnie McNiven, Musicians Union. Chair, Congress, I rise to speak in full support of this motion, a vital call to action for the safety, dignity and equality of workers, particularly women and LGBTQIA+ people who travel late at night as part of their working lives. Whether it's a nurse finishing a night shift, a performer coming off stage, a bar worker closing up, or a bus driver ending a route, too many of our workers face a terrifying journey home. Harassment, assault, fear, and let's be clear, it's not just the journey, it's the dark station, the empty platform, the bus that doesn't come, the long walk in the shadows. And for workers on low pay, the cost of living crisis means taxis and ride shares are not an option. People are being left to choose between personal safety and putting food on their table. That is not a choice anyone should have to make. Let me say this clearly. When we create safe public spaces for women, we create safe public spaces for everyone. When public transport is staffed, secure, and inclusive, it benefits disabled people, older people, LGBTQIA+ people, and anyone who has ever felt vulnerable after dark, and I include myself in that. And as the Scottish Government's own 2023 report confirmed, safety improves with a visible presence. Staff at stations, on trains, and on the streets. These are jobs that literally save lives. Congress, it's time to turn our concern into action. Let's send a message today that every worker, no matter their shift, their income, or their identity, has the right to get home safely. I urge Congress to support this motion and its amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronnie. Colleague, are you wanting to speak on this motion or the next one? Okay, colleagues, that was amended motion 55, women's safety travelling to and from work. Please note that the General Counsel is recommending support of this motion. And I'll move to the vote. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Amended motion 55, women's safety travelling to and from work is carried, and I'm going to hand back to our President.
Thank you, Congress. I now call on motion 61, Disability Employment Gap, and I invite the STUC Disabled Workers Conference to move the motion. Welcome, colleague.
Good afternoon, Conference. Moving the motion on the disability employment gap. I genuinely don't think I've ever stood here and felt so much despair as I do today. When this motion was written, it was done to highlight concern around the disability employment gap, which, despite efforts, had remained mainly unchanged since the motion was written. We're even more alarmed and really quite fearful about the proposed reform of disability benefits and supports by our current UK government. They have so far detailed how they are going to scale back and cut disability benefits in an attempt to try and get more people into work. But they've yet to detail anything at all about how they're going to support disabled people into work once they take all the money off them and make them feel rubbish to boot. So there needs to be focus on disabled people gaining and maintaining employment. Although Scotland has now got its devolved benefit system, we're not safe. These cuts to PIP, which is adult disability payment up here, and to universal credit are going to hit hard. They're also, going to build an already massive fears with disabled people who are at risk of having bank accounts monitored. And, we've proven time and time again that we deserve these benefits. It's not an easy application process, but yet we're jumping through more and more and more hoops just to get what they told us we deserved in the first place. Research and shared experiences from disabled workers, it doesn't paint a pretty picture. Almost 1 in 3 disabled people in employment are living in poverty. Disabled people disproportionately experience chronic poverty and barriers into the world of work. On average, between 2014 and 2023, disabled workers moved out of work at a higher rate compared to their non-disabled counterparts. Disabled people tell us time and time again that they're not supported and that they're unaware of the supports and adjustments or equipment that they're entitled to. Employers also tell us that they feel ill-equipped to support or give solutions to disabled workers for fear of getting it wrong. We need to have these conversations. Managers need to have these conversations. Disabled people need to have the conversations. They need to know what their needs are. It's hard because you don't know what you don't know. And that's why it needs to be on the table. Do you know, it needs to be much more open and honest and upfront. And we need to move beyond seeing disabled people as poor wee souls that we don't really want to upset. We massively believe that raising awareness and understanding the experiences of disabled people can change these statistics. The Scottish Government aimed to halve the disability employment gap by 2038, a target we fully support, but we feel can be much more achievable by the involvement and backing of our trade union movement. We believe raising awareness and understanding of the legislation and the supports to that disabled workers are entitled to, and assuring guidance for employers is straightforward, accurate and coherent, that this will happen. To allow this to happen, we are asking that we form partnerships with employers, such as job centres, recruitment agencies, in order to raise awareness of the supports and the services that disabled people that can empower them into employment, to improve resources, organising support for people into employment so that they're aware of the supports, the initiatives and the entitlements that they're due, and to link with relative organisations to ensure that opportunities for disabled people entering the workforce exist, and that we're looking at creating internships and apprenticeships for disabled people, offering specialist union support and guidance. And lastly, I think this is my favourite one, enhancing the already incredible Unions into Schools programme to include overcoming barriers to employment and in-work supports. Conference, I move.
Thank you, colleague. I now call on EIS to second the motion.
Is it still just afternoon? Good afternoon. Julie Crystal, EIS. Wait, sorry, my thing's upside down. Primary school teacher, I apologise, just get settled in and get ready for it. I'm actually speaking to this quite simply from a teacher's point of view. I'm absolutely horrified by the statements at the beginning of this motion. As a teacher, I've spent most of my life teaching children to overcome lack of knowledge. Smash through that barrier, make sure you bring your pals along with you. Whether it's recognising that their differences are a hindrance or a help, to finding something that they can then go forward in society to enjoy doing, or that they're good at, or they can put up with to find work. The need for this motion makes me feel like Scotland and myself have betrayed those hopeful hearts I've taught for 30-odd years. Employment offers more than money to pay the bills. It offers social opportunities with potential groups of colleagues, and if you're really lucky, an annoying friend or two to make sure you get home at night. You'll meet those who are different from you with different ideas and different cultures, people who will challenge your thinking, but also people whose thinking you can challenge. 100 years ago, we deliberately locked people away out of sight if they were different. Is it any different today if people are holed up in houses because they don't know how to get into employment, who to talk to, where to get basic information, and then nothing has really changed? To me, this sounds like the finding positive destinations for children leaving school has failed. Or maybe it's just failed anybody that has a disability. Finally, there is a saying that you've heard already in teaching. Children don't know what they don't know. If we keep the crayons in the cupboard, how's the bairn going to know that I've got crayons in the cupboard? We need
to make sure that this communication is clear, obvious, and if we are the people that have the knowledge that we pass it on, I'll say, oh, hold on a minute, I'll just open the cupboard for you. Or let me, hold on a minute, yes, I know where that regulation is. You can have a job. So, I'm going to be short and sweet. So, like teachers everywhere, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand in support of this motion.
Thanks, Delegate. I now call on any other supporting or opposing speaker in the debate. Come forward, colleague.
President, Congress, Frank Cairns, Unison Scotland, in support of this motion. The disability employment gap is a stark reminder of the systematic barriers that disabled individuals face. Alarmingly, disabled workers who also contend with additional inequality due to age, gender, ethnicity or poverty experience an even a wider gap. It is imperative that we address the disadvantages. Disabled individuals frequently report of feeling unsupported and disadvantaged during job searches and in their employment. Many are unaware of the support available to them, or often employers are supported, providing lack of awareness and these resources. This means missed opportunities for our disabled workers to access the assistance they need to thrive in their career. The motion highlights the failures to live up to the commitment in the film production and entertainment. Congress acknowledged the Scottish Government commitment to halving the disability employment gap by 2038. However, the trade union movement can play a pivotal role in overcoming the barrier faced by disabled people. We can raise awareness of the support that disabled workers are entitled to. Unions can help to ensure disabled people gain and maintain purposeful employment. Additionally, providing straightforward, accurate, coherent guidance for employers and critical fostering inclusive workplace. The motion calls for us to go out, to do our best, educate and organise. Implementing these measures will work towards the closure of the disability employment gap. Please support this motion.
Thanks, Frank. If there are no further speakers, Congress, that was motion 61, disability employment gap. Please note that the General Council recommends support. I will now take you to the vote. Can I see all those in favour? Please show. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Motion 61, disability employment gap, is carried. I now call Composite I, neurodiversity in the workplace, covering motions 57, 58, 59 and 60. I invite PCS to move the composite motion. Welcome, Delegate.
President, Congress, Kirsty Brown on behalf of PCS, moving composite motion I, neurodiversity in the workplace. Congress, this motion focuses on neurodivergent workers, but it speaks to a wider truth that far too many people who need reasonable adjustments face unnecessary barriers, discrimination and disadvantage in work and in society. When we remove those barriers, we don't just help individuals, we build fairer, stronger workplaces and a better Scotland for everyone. Passing this motion is just the first step. We must ensure that the Scottish Government's Learning, Disabilities, Autism and Neurodivergence Bill is robust, comprehensive and enforceable in order to see it become an effective tool to support neurodivergent workers. By fighting for inclusive recruitment and mentoring, we open up real pathways into employment for neurodivergent people. By demanding meaningful, reasonable adjustments in every workplace and ensuring that occupational health services are used to support, not to obstruct, we help create environments where neurodivergent workers can thrive. By challenging bullying, harassment and discrimination wherever they occur, we make it clear that no one should be forced to choose between hiding who they are and keeping their job. We should not, as neurodivergent people, be forced to undertake the enormous and exhausting mental load of masking in order to be treated with basic respect. By ensuring that managers receive proper training to recognise and support learning differences, we build workplaces where neurodivergent workers are understood, respected and valued. And this work is urgent because every time a neurodivergent worker is denied an adjustment, left unsupported or driven out by discrimination, it sends a message that their contribution is not valued, that their presence is not wanted. And that is, unfortunately, an experience that all too many neurodivergent people in this room will recognise. Our movement has a crucial role to play. Equality doesn't happen by accident. It must be fought for, protected and built into our workplaces from the ground up. This motion gives us the tools to do just that. Please support the composite motion.
Thank you, Delegate. I now call the Royal College of Midwives to second the composite motion. Thank you, Delegate.
Lorna Lowe, Royal College of Midwives, first time delegate, first time speaker. I'm speaking to you today as the mum of a brilliant neurodivergent young person who I have watched struggle through school, but she got there in spite of the pandemic. But now I'm having to support her in the workplace. Sorry, I didn't realise it would make me emotional. She starts off with hope in a new job, and just due to lack of understanding, lack of reasonable adjustments, the exhaustion starts, the frustration, and then the burnout, and then she leaves. And we're seeing this all the time in our workplaces. In the Royal College of Midwives, we worked with some of our neurodivergent students to come up with a toolkit, and we're doing really well now. We can support them while they're in education. But the problem is that they then move on into the workplace and we're just not supporting them properly. The NHS in Scotland has got this really robust suite of policies that should be supporting our workers, but unfortunately we know it's not. And this is down to education. It's the education of managers, but it's actually all of us, and our EDI education doesn't meet our needs. So, Congress, please support this motion.
Thank you, Delegate. I now call Aegis to speak in support of the composite motion.
Thank you. Ricky Markham, Aegis Union, supporting this composite motion. Our neurodivergent colleagues make a valuable and important contribution in the workplace. However, the challenges they face in simply accessing the workforce are significant, not to mention the conditions they face once they have a foot in the door. The level of blatant discrimination against this group is astonishing. For a trade union official to be called in for an off-the-record conversation with an employer to casually be told they're unemployable elsewhere, so they'll like it or lump it. The level of ignorance is astonishing. We must guarantee opportunities for our neurodivergent siblings. Attitudes at every level must change to ensure the resources, support and opportunities they need are commonplace and a basic expectation. Congress calls on the STUC to work with affiliates to create and promote opportunities specifically tailored for young people with neurodiversity challenges by implementing top-down neurodiversity awareness and training in the workplace, work experience programs for young neurodivergent workers, mentorships and support programs, inclusive recruitment practices that consider the unique challenges faced by young neurodivergent individuals entering the workplace, ensuring fair and equal opportunities for all. As a collective, the responsibility of organising to protect and support this group lies with us. We must create a legacy for our neurodiverse youth, which sees them welcomed into the workplace confidently and without barriers. Congress, please support.
Thank you, Delegate. I now call on the STUC Disabled Workers Conference to speak in support of the composite motion.
Thanks, President. Congress, Tony Snedden, STUC Disability Committee, speaking in support of Composite I. Congress, current research estimates between 10 and 15% of population in Scotland is neurodivergent. However, the true figure may be higher due to fear of discrimination and lack of diagnosis. In Scotland, thousands of potentially autistic people are waiting up to 4.5 years to start the diagnostic process, an utter disgrace. Discrimination, stigma and bias associated with neurodivergence may cause increased stress, contributing to mental health issues. Union representation across Scotland have seen an increase in personal casework relating to bullying, harassment and discrimination of neurodivergent members. A disemployment gap of 31.9% currently exists within Scotland. Reasonable adjustments are crucial for neurodivergent people to work well and stay healthy. Small reasonable adjustments can be made in the same way that are for visible disabilities to make job adverts more appealing, hiring processes easier, and to allow employees to flourish in the workplace who are not neurotypical. Offices can be made more neurodivergent friendly by having designated quiet spaces, natural light, flexible working spaces, and fostering a supportive environment. Neurodiverse people should be included as a part of the workplace as themselves no or less valuable than any other worker. When workplaces make adjustments for neurodiverse people, it improves our workplace and better for everyone. Thank you. Please support.
Thank you, Delegate. I now call on any supporting or opposing speakers in this debate. Come forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Claire Craig from the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy, supporting the composite. And I wanted to bring you some good news. I wanted to speak about some excellent work that's been going on in Ayrshire and Arran. Around 3 years ago, we commenced our Physio Neurodiversity Development Group. Consisting of neurodivergent physios, managers and staff side, we collated healthcare and trade union resources available to support neurodivergent staff. Many unions here, including Prospect and GMB, have particularly helpful packages of information which we included and shared. We adapted the RAP Wellness Recovery Action Plan tool to create a needs analysis owned and kept by the neurodivergent staff member to assist in identifying and communicating needs to managers and other staff. And we created a training session for local physios to recognise the strengths of neurodivergent staff and the challenges they may experience. The tools were used to support a staff member when concerns about their practice arose. Using them, they were supported to recognise signs and patterns of undiagnosed neurodivergence and implement reasonable adjustments, enabling them to do their job more effectively. As this outlines, not everyone who is neurodivergent will have or will want a diagnosis. Healthcare professions are female-dominated, women are often diagnosed later in life, so have learned to mask and fit in, but symptoms are still present. ACAS states a diagnosis is not needed to be considered disabled under the Equality Act. What is needed is recognition, support and inclusivity. As trade unionists, we're well placed to lead and support the development and delivery of neurodiversity resources and training. Enacting many of these asks includes collating resources many of the affiliated unions here already have and sharing them for all to benefit from. I hope we'll all work together to promote good practice and enable neurodivergent people to thrive in the workplace going forwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Next speaker, please, come forward.
Good afternoon, Congress. Christina Fleming, EIS. I just wanted to pick up on this from the perspective of neurodivergent women in education. So historically, women have been conditioned to fit into a world that often doesn't accommodate their needs. They're pressurised to behave in a certain way. For neurodivergent women, this social pressure can lead many to develop an ability to mask their symptoms. While this skill may help them to navigate social situations, it also means that their neurodivergent traits are more likely to go unnoticed or understood. When women do express these needs, they are often misinterpreted. Instead of being understood as neurodivergent, they are more likely to be labelled with a mental health condition. This not only deprives them of the appropriate support, but intensifies their challenges. Worryingly, research suggests that 80% of autistic women remain undiagnosed or are misdiagnosed by the age of 18. For every woman diagnosed with autistic spectrum condition, roughly 3 to 6 men have been diagnosed. It's also estimated that the most common age for women to be diagnosed with ADHD is late 30s to early 40s, whereas men considerably younger, around 7 years old. I'll just quickly finish up. For many, diagnosis can be helpful, but a diagnosis is not required. The most important thing I wanted to leave you with is the key areas that could be really helpful. So, understand what masking is, provide a safe and trusting environment for disclosure, support self-advocacy and shared advocacy, and provide, and really, really importantly, maintain reasonable adjustments and accommodations. Please support the motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Delegate. Come forward, next speaker.
Thank you very much. Janine Legg, Unison Scotland, speaking in support of the composite. President Congress, there is a clear need to change the way we support neurodiversity within the workplace, and that is what this composite aims to do. People are diverse in their neurodiversity, but they often tell remarkably similar stories. And in my role as a rep, every week I deal with people in these situations. People that have disclosed their condition, had work taken away from them, and they are now being treated differently. Attendance at work is being scrutinised because there are ongoing adjustments to medication that impacts upon sleep and mood, which policies do not allow for. Colleagues complain about them because they don't join in with the banter in the office due to differences in interpersonal skills. Students are being failed on placements because the assessor does not know how to accommodate their neurodiversity. The built environment is not helpful, as most public service buildings do not allow adjustment for factors such as light and noise levels. Our neurodiverse colleagues have much to contribute and bring their own unique perspective to the workplace. Public services are struggling, and in many areas recruitment is at rock bottom. No one should feel less because they are neurodiverse. We cannot afford to lose this amazing group of individuals because it may be more complicated or slightly more time-consuming to make the adjustments that they need. We need to give people that little bit of extra support and understanding. This composite outlines a range of measures that would allow us to do that, measures that we can take and implement. Please support. Thank you.
Thanks, Janine. Congress, that was composite I, neurodiversity in the workplace. Please note that the General Council recommends support. I'll now move you to the vote. Can I see all those in favour? Please show. Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? Composite I, neurodiversity in the workplace, is carried. I now move to composite JI, suicide and mental health prevention and awareness, covering motions 63 and 64. I invite any SUWT to move the composite motion. Thank you.
Chair, Congress, NUCWT, the Teachers Union, proposing a motion suicide and mental health prevention and awareness. My machine's just gone dark. While suicides are one of the biggest causes of work-related deaths each year, they are not included in Health and Safety Executive's annual reporting or its inspection and protection regimes. The NUCWT believes that this exemption must be removed to help address the factors behind work-related suicides. Occupations with the highest risk of suicide and suicide attempts include healthcare, education and other public sector workers. NUCWT have been getting reports across the country about an increased number of teachers experience poor mental health, suicidal thoughts and, again, attempting suicide. The NUCWT Wellbeing at Work survey found 87% say they have lost sleep due to work-related worries, 85% report feelings of anxiousness, and 84% low energy levels. 1 in 10 teachers report that the work-related stress has led to relationship breakdown. Nearly a quarter, 2/3, report drinking more alcohol, and 12% report the increased use of antidepressants. Been there. 3% they say have self-harmed as a result of their work. Nearly 1 in 5, that's 19%, said they have taken medication as a result of work-related stress and have seen a doctor. More than 1 in 10, that's 13%, and they have sought counselling. 86% of teachers told NUCWT they believed that their job had adversely affected their mental health, and 68% their physical health in the previous 12 months. Nobody should be brought to the brink of ending their own life because of their job. Workers rightly feel the government has played a critical role in fueling today's mental health crisis. We, the working people, did not ask for austerity part 2. Instead, we need direct investment into our public services and social security via tax increases on the wealth, property and assets. We urgently need a new deal for working people and to build a workforce plan that will secure decent working conditions and improve morale across all sectors, including education. Instead of tackling the current mental health crisis, governments have instead deliberately pursued policies that made matters worse, with a lack of investment in essential frontline services and support. It is no exaggeration to say that the teachers are in this grip of a mental health emergency. The number of teachers having suicidal thoughts and attempts to end their own lives is on the rise. Ending the climate of excessive working hours, unsustainable working demands, pupil violence, bullying, employer practices must be the priority for MSPs and MPs. There can be no doubt that the rapid number of suicides and attempts at particular people within the working age of population, particularly amongst healthcare workers, education and other public sector workers, constitutes an emergency. If we are to turn the tide of this mental emergency, we must have campaigns for full funded mandatory mental first aid training that includes suicide prevention. Suicide awareness and prevention must be bargaining priorities across all workspaces and must lobby for increased funding for mental health services across our workspace. My employer, East Ayrshire Council, has a programme called an initiative Here to Listen. I hope you are. They have trained 684 employees in suicide prevention. This will increase over the next few months. If they can do it, other councils can follow this good practice. My story myself, close to suicide a decade ago, this is quite emotional for me, when a manager pushes me over the edge at a school. So I knew that what the kind of initiative means, counselling and occupational health, that saved me. I'm a survivor, and I want it for the rest. So that allows me to stand here and do this motion. So please, conference, support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. I now call on East Kilbride and South Lanarkshire Trades Union Council to second the composite motion. Thank you, Delegate.
Kenny Wallace, East Kilbride and South Lanarkshire Trades Council, seconding composite JAI. Receiving a call to inform me that a construction worker I once represented had taken his own life was undoubtedly the worst day of my working career. Sadly, this is not an isolated occurrence. Over 7,000 construction workers have taken their own lives in 10 years in Britain. That's over 2 a day. 26% of construction workers have considered suicide. 34% are currently experiencing poor mental health. 100% of females, trade persons, have suffered from poor mental health. The factors are many. Short-term nature of work, lone working, injury in health and safety, being bullied, toxic masculine culture, increased pressure to meet unrealistic deadlines, fear of speaking up. This is a crisis, and the supports provided are not sufficient. These figures are horrific. While some employers do provide mental health training or mental health champions, some also provide EAPs. These can be limited to short-term counselling and signposting. And with external mental health services under so much pressure, access to services are not guaranteed. We need better supports. Now, 66% of construction workers have admitted to using alcohol or drugs to mitigate against the symptoms of poor mental health. This cannot go on. We need to address this crisis to ensure workers receive adequate and proportional supports long term. Let no other worker suffer in silence. Let no other worker's family have to make that call. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Congress, I now call on any other supporting or opposing speaker to come to the rostrum. Come forward, Brenda. Thank you.
Brenda Aitchison, Unison Scotland, supporting Composite J. Congress, most of you will be familiar with the TV programme Frasier, whose lead character, Dr. Fraser Crane, signed off his radio show wishing his listeners good mental health. And that is essential for all our workplaces. The first bullet point calls on the STUC General Council to campaign for fully funded mandatory mental health first aiders training in all workplaces that includes suicide prevention and awareness. Unison debated this at our National Delegate Conference some years ago, and there were speakers for and against. Some of the delegates were concerned that being a mental health first aider would be too much of a burden on members. But the motion was passed, and we've got thousands of members in Unison that are fully trained mental health first aiders. I'm one of them, but what I am not is a mental health worker. What I am, and thousands of others, are trained to listen, reassure and connect. And what it does is remove the stigma and fear and gives us confidence to approach fellow workers in the workplace that are in distress, and it puts mental health at the top of our agenda. The aims of a mental health first aider are simple: preserve life, provide initial help, prevent the problem getting worse, promote recovery of good mental health and provide comfort. Congress, what's not to like? Wishing everyone good mental health. Please support.
Thanks, Brenda. Next speaker, come forward. Hi, I'm Claire Craig from the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy again. This is an important emotive motion which I completely support, and I want to commend the speakers for sharing their experiences already, and this leads on quite well from what's just been said. I'm just here to urge and suggest a bit of caution with the term mental health first aid, as it's a registered title and is not the only mental health and suicide training available, as someone made reference to earlier. So making this specific training mandatory may incur additional costs where other relevant training already exists. I'm a mental health physiotherapist and I have been for over 16 years. I absolutely agree that having mental health training is essential and would recommend it to everyone. Through my work in courses such as Assist and NHS TURAS, Ask Tell Save a Life suicide prevention training, I'm a mental health contact, I'm an Ask Tell Save a Life facilitator, but I'm not, however, a mental health first aider by title, and this is likely to be the same in several workplaces. So I support the call for mandatory mental health and suicide awareness training in work, but I ask that in actioning this, we look at the range of training available, and registered mental health first aid courses are not the only ones recognised. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Delegate. Next speaker, come forward.
President, Congress, Sunita Nair, EIS. The importance of mental health in relation to workload is crucial, as unmanaged and excessive workloads can significantly damage an individual's psychological well-being. The increase in violence and aggression in the workplace and in schools impact on everyone's mental health, but I want to focus on how that might disproportionately impact minority communities. In the EIS branch survey 2023, almost 40% of EIS branches reported an increase in prejudice-based violent and aggressive incidents. Inequities based on race, ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation or disability, including misogyny, create environments that are harmful to mental well-being and can significantly elevate mental health and well-being risk, especially in the current climate. Minoritised groups are disproportionately facing systemic barriers to accessing public services, education inequality and discrimination. These stressors create chronic psychological strain that contributes to higher rates of anxiety, depression and other mental health conditions. Experiences of racism, homophobia, transphobia, ableism, xenophobia can lead to feelings of isolation, fear and invalidation. Microaggressions and overt acts of bias erode mental health over time and can reduce a person's sense of belonging and safety. Marginalised groups, including LGBTQ+ youth and people of colour, have disproportionately higher suicide rates. For example, LGBTQ+ youth are significantly more likely to attempt suicide, especially if they experience family rejection or community hostility. More must be done to support everyone's mental health. I urge you to all please support this motion.
Thank you, Delegate. Next speaker, come forward.
President, Congress, Kerry McCrone, Fire Brigade Union. The FBU fully supports this composite's calls to promote research on mental health and suicide and its causes across all sectors, as well as promoting mental health awareness, preventing suicides and training by employers. Following the FBU's commissioned research with the University of Central Lancaster into the effects of fire contaminants, the issue of poor mental health amongst firefighters was highlighted. The FBU with UCLAN are currently undertaking a mental health survey of our members to highlight the issues faced by firefighters when it comes to their mental health. We know Scottish firefighters are under increased pressure due to the loss of approximately 1,400 firefighter posts since the creation of the single service, the loss of appliances, and now the threat of station closures. This means greater pressure on firefighters to do more with less. This pressure, coupled with the intensity of the nature of incidents attended and ever-increasing workloads, will and has had a detrimental effect on the mental health of firefighters. In 2019, a study by Mind, the mental health charity, found that 60% of fire service workers who took part reported having personal experience of mental health problems. FBU Scotland undertook a workplace stress survey in 2024 of firefighters based in our control rooms, which showed a shocking number of employees felt under stress on a daily basis. 75% of those who felt high levels of stress felt their employer did not take adequate steps to reduce workplace stress. Although we don't have the statistics on how many fire service employees have lost their lives to suicide, through personal knowledge, I know there's many. The Fire and Rescue Service is a heavily male-dominated workforce, and we know that men in particular are at risk of suicide. We need to ensure there is support for all workers and that employers take responsibility and steps to ensure the wellness of their employees to prevent poor mental health and suicide. We need to ensure that every worker has easy, stigma-free access to counselling and mental health services. We need to create environments where asking for help is seen as a strength, not a weakness. And we need to keep talking about this issue loudly and often. The FBU supports.
Thank you, Delegate. Any further speakers in the debate? I now call, that was Composite J, which is suicide and mental health prevention and awareness. Please note the General Council recommends support. I'll now take you to the vote. Can I see all those in favour? Please show. Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? Composite J, suicide and mental health prevention and awareness is carried. I now call motion 62, wage parity for young workers, and I invite the STUC Youth Conference to move the motion.
Chair, Conference, Sozi Ken, STUC Youth Conference. I move the motion 62 for wage parity. National living wage is almost twice as high, £12.21 for someone who is over 21, versus national minimum wage for someone less than 18 or in an apprenticeship at £7.55. And the Living Wage Foundation states that over 9% of people working in Scotland experience insecure work and are paid under the living wage. And you might think 9% doesn't seem that much, but that translates to 250,000 workers. Young workers don't get discounts. We pay the same rent, we pay the same amount for food, we pay the same amount for council tax. None of this is less because we are younger, but why are we paid less? Housing, food, and other essential bills are increasingly inflated due to the cost of living crisis and the greed of corporations. And why are we paid less? If you come up to me afterwards and you're able to come up with one reason for why young workers should be paid less, that doesn't, for me to answer back, exploitation, then pat yourself on the back, really. Young worker exploitation also occurs in retail and healthcare sectors primarily, as we've heard from the retail industry and social care, particularly today. Employers also fire and rehire workers who are on the cusp of turning 21 just to keep labour costs low. So I call for STUC Congress, General Council to do a report into wage discrimination, lead a political campaign on the basis of equal pay for equal work, and to really think about the respect for young workers, because campaigning for young workers, I found that this is a major issue, but we also need to pay them better for them to get the respect that they deserve. If we are the futures of the workforce, of the country, and even the world, then at least we should start paying young workers what they're worth. In a world where capital is increasingly tied with survival. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. I now call on the EIS to second the motion.
Good afternoon, President, Congress. Neil Anderson, EIS, and from naming the union would be no surprise when I say that I'm a teacher. I work in a secondary school, so work daily with people under 18. I know what they are capable of, their skills, their knowledge and thinking that they have when they leave school. There is no reason for people under 18 to be paid less than 2/3 per hour than that of someone 21 or over. Apart from, of course, from the capitalists using any excuse to pay anyone less money. There is no reason due to people's capabilities at those different ages for that. This is effectively a discrimination that young people are suffering from to their detriment. Our movement has stood up over many types of discrimination in the past and we're still doing so today. This is another cause we have to stand up for and ensure fairness for all ages. Support the motion.
Thank you, Delegate. I now call on any other supporting or opposing speakers in the debate. Ben, thank you.
Hello again, comrades. Ben Lund from the Musicians Union. Very, very proud to be supporting this particular motion moved by the STUC Youth Committee. So I think just want to add an extra bit of detail, which I think is very important for everyone to know, is the nature in how youth and inexperience is exploited within the culture sector. So, as we've already expertly heard, the extent to which the difference in wage parity is so exploitative, it extends even further within the culture sector. Partly because, as the nature of our work, we need time to learn our skills, develop our craft, to then become the artists and the workers that we are going to be for the rest of our lives. This takes time, this takes nurturing. So what this ultimately means is many, many organisations around Scotland, around Britain, around the world will have opportunities which will be there for exposure, or this is your chance to work with an orchestra, or this is your chance to work with a leading ensemble, which in many instances you'll have a little bit of compensation. So for example, a project that I did with the RSNO, they only paid me $2,000 for that project. If I was to be commissioned by the orchestra on MU rates, that would be closer to 10. So that's one example of this that goes on. Alongside that, it goes even worse, where many places will have you charge people for the opportunity for the development and so on. Then we have all these various different elements with auditions being charged just to participate for a job interview. Can any of you imagine having to pay to get into a job audition? And these are the kinds of hoops that many young workers are having to deal with in the culture sector. This is not just an issue within the Musicians Union. This is an issue that many of our comrades in Equity will find, or many of our comrades in the SAU will find, that exploitation is going very, very far, partly because of the inexperience of the young workers, and also because they see it as a great opportunity, because if they can just get away with doing this, they can then go back to arts funders and go, look, we supported all these young artists, but they'll never pay them again because they're happy to exploit them to make themselves look good. Support this motion. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ben. Next speaker, come forward, please.
President, Congress, Stephen Larkin, Unison Scotland, speaking in support of motion 62. So they say old age and cunning always beats youth and enthusiasm. I don't know about that, but it does pay better, I know that. So that really isn't fair. Apart from that, it means that youth committee delegates have got an excuse and not buy around. I jest. But that is a trivial example of a real problem. Because as the motion makes clear, young workers' electricity bills don't come in at a lower rate for under 21s. You don't get a cheaper loaf of bread in the supermarket because you're under 18. So, conference, many unions, my own included, fought long and hard to get equal pay settlements for our women members. The principle there was equal pay for work of equal value. That equal value has been delivered by many young workers in many workplaces across Scotland, but the value they generate doesn't go into their pockets, it goes into the employers' pockets. Congress, we exist to combat the injustices that the system deals out to working people. This is an obvious and gross injustice. one that could be righted easily and quickly if we had the political will that existed to do so. Congress, we need to put the pressure on to generate that political will and deliver for young people. So I just want to finish by saying this is actually really close to my heart. My oldest son turns 21 on Thursday. I've seen him the last few years how hard he's worked, as he shouldn't take to get to his milestone birthday to get the pay that his peers get through default. Please support this motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. That was motion 62, wage parity for young workers. Please note the General Council recommends support. I will now take you to the vote. Can I see all those in favour? Please show. Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? Motion 62, wage parity for young workers, is carried. I now call on motion 65, seafarer employment and training. I invite the RMT to move the motion. Thank you.
President Congress, Dan Henderson, RMT. Pardon me. Moving Resolution 65, Seafarer Employment and Training. RMT welcomes the Employment Rights Bill provision, a provision for a mandatory seafarers charter. You'll all remember 2022, St Patrick's Day. P&O sacked almost 800 seafarers and replaced them with low-cost exploited seafarers recruited for thousands of miles away. Our workers were taken off the ferries while these workers were sat totally oblivious to what they were doing and came on and replaced them. A seafarers charter will support and protect these workers who are paid a minimum wage on 8-week voyage contracts with no pension rights. We call for a restoration of ferry services between Scotland and Northern Europe with collective bargaining for maritime unions that are Fair Work specific. Currently, the last operator to run in that route was DFDS, who were worse than P&O. They were paying stewards £1.85 an hour, which is disgusting in this day and age. So the future of that route, if it happens, must be organised with collective bargaining. The future of the maritime industry is dependent on young people. Young people being trained to crew the ships, to crew the ferries, to crew the ships that come in and out of Scotland. The CalMac apprenticeship programme began in 2013, and this year we'll see the 200th apprentice get through that programme. And touching on the last resolution, the pay was negotiated by RMT. At the start of the apprenticeship programme, they're paid 50% of the rate that they'll get paid at the end. Halfway through, they'll get 75%. And it's open to 17 to 24-year-olds. And at the end of that programme, a 19-year-old could be earning 100% of that salary, which is no far off £50,000 a year with a final salary pension. That's what workers deserve in this country. That's what seafarers deserve in this country. Young workers are recruited for local and island communities, and that, for us, there's 70% of the CalMac workforce are islanders and for local communities that serve the CalMac network. Bringing these young people into these jobs and keeps that economic sustainability of some of the most fragile economies, some of the most beautiful places in this country, but some of the most fragile. Keeps these young people in these areas. The young workers recruited, current apprentices that we've got for Bute, Cumbria, Isla, Jura, Oban, Mull, Barra, Lewis and Harris. As I said, some of the most beautiful places in this country, but some of the most fragile economically. And working in the work that we've done, we've worked closely with STUC and Scottish Union Learning, in particular, Natalie Price and Tommy Breslin with the Modern Apprentice, the working groups that are set up, and they're invaluable to us and the work that we do, and we thank the STUC and we thank Scottish Union Learning for that help and support that we get. And working, we provide an induction week for these young workers, and it's with the trade union working with the employer, and we educate them in mental health, cyber security, diversity and inclusion, money advice. We bring everybody in to do all the stuff. One of the most important sessions that we do in trade unions is with apprentices joining the RMT, and it's 100% for them joining for them. So I'd just say, moving on, for us is support the training. Congress, support the training for maritime colleges, support the opportunities for young people, support a direct award for publicly funded lifeline ferry services for CalMac, and say no to P&O. And finally, and all the bad publicity that has been with CalMac and with the vessels and the shipbuilding in Scotland, support publicly funded vessel replacement with ships for Scotland, built in Scotland at Ferguson's in Port Glasgow. I move.
Thank you, Della. I call for a seconder on the motion. Thank you.
President, Congress, Mickey Smith and Aldous International, second motion 65. Yeah, as Dan alluded to previously, I did go to sea a long time ago. I actually went to sea 45 years ago in 1980 as a DAC rating. And when I did go to sea then, there was 51,000 UK seafarers, 28,000 were officers and 23,000 were ratings. In our industry, planning of trades and delivering goods and passengers across the globe. However, since then we've seen a dramatic decline in our numbers, and the recent statistics from the Department of Transport shows that our numbers have dropped by 30,000. 30,000, 10,000 now are officers and under 10,000 are ratings. Let's be quite frank here, colleagues. The main factor in this decline has been a concerted campaign by certain ship owners and operators to eradicate the British seafarer. Just look at P&O's what they did to their 786 seafarers on St Patrick's Day 2022. In the main, the jobs we have lost are still out there. It's been a race to the bottom with non-UK seafarers being exploited and continues being exploited by being paid well below the British rail rates of pay, and indeed many seafarers are being paid below the national minimum wage. Sadly, UK nationals only account for 11% of seafarers employed by the UK Chamber of Shipping member companies. The industry remains male-dominated, with 84% being males, and we face an ageing workforce challenge. With serious concerns relevant to the UK maritime sector regarding retention and skills, with 48% of seafarers aged between 40 and 61. There's a growing need for succession planning and knowledge to transfer to younger workers. Congress, we need action now to protect our seafarers of the present and, most importantly, for the future. Please support. I second.
Thanks, Delegate. Any other speakers in the debate? Thank you.
President, Congress, Jeanette Finlay, UCU Scotland, speaking in support of motion 65, proposed by RMT and supported by Nautilus. I wanted to speak in support of this motion specifically in relation to the parts that relate to training. And I do this as a professional economist who's conducted research on the ferry industry for over 20 years. Over all of that period, the standard of training of seafarers employed by CalMac, and as a consequence, the safety record of CalMac has been second to none. Our publicly owned ferry operator is responsible for the training of a considerable proportion of ratings and apprentices in the UK, ensuring the supply of officers into the future. When new standards are introduced, our public sector ferry operator puts its workers through their training immediately, while private sector operators often wait to the very last minute, sometimes as long as years. Currently, I am, along with colleagues from the University of Glasgow, writing up the results of a 2-year-long ESRC-funded research project on a stakeholder model of ferry provision. And based on our current research, I can tell you that workers from all over the country want to work for CalMac, and they specifically told us that the quality and quantity of training is a large part of the attraction. Moreover, the quality of training and therefore progression means that CalMac offers well-paid jobs with the opportunity of considerable career progression to communities on both the mainland and on islands with fragile economies and limited labour markets. This motion, among other things, seeks to ensure that this fantastic record and fantastic contribution to the life and well-being of workers and passengers and to the economy of our islands is maintained to the benefit of us all. So look out for the report when it's published next month. Support our public sector ferry services and support motion 65.
Thanks, Jeanette. Congress, I am going to move to tomorrow's business, Composite K and Composite L, but I am going to take one more motion before we finish business today. I now call on... Sorry. I'm being advised that I can't make that decision. You need to make that decision. So I am proposing... Oh, sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. My apologies, colleagues. It's been a long day. My apologies to the movers of that motion. That was motion 65, Seafarers Employment and Training. Please note that the General Council recommends support. I will now move to the vote. Thank you, Vice President. All of those in favour, please show. Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? Motion 65, Seafarer Employment and Training, is now carried. Thank you. So, back to what I was saying earlier. I'm going to move to tomorrow's business, Composite K and Composite L, but we do have time for one more motion before the end of business today. I now call motion 71, support from the FBU Decon campaign. FBU in the hall? Yeah, thank you.
President, Congress, Kerry Macrone, Fire Brigades Union, moving motion 71, support for the FBU Decon campaign. Congress, last year the FBU brought the work of the FBU's Decon campaign to Congress. The carrying of that motion and the support of the movement is appreciated by us all at the FBU, and we thank you for that. We bring this issue back to Congress following the publication in the last year of the devastating effects on firefighters who attended the Grenfell fire. Out of the 136 of our brothers and sisters who attended, we have seen 66 cases of digestive diseases, 64 cases of respiratory diseases, 22 cases of neurological diseases, and 11 cases of cancer. Despite the publication of this, alongside the University of Central Lancaster's research into the effects of contaminants on firefighters' health, firefighters are still facing challenges when it comes to decontamination practices. A lack of Scottish Government funding to the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service means we still have fire stations which lack the facilities and equipment to allow firefighters to decontaminate after attending a fire. Fire and Rescue Services still haven't implemented our calls for annual and lifelong health monitoring programmes for firefighters. We are still fighting for presumptive legislation to recognise specific cancers and diseases as occupational illnesses for firefighters. The Scottish Government must increase funding to the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service to allow the full implementation of decontamination procedures, the equipment required, and to undertake training. We must implement health monitoring, and we must get the presumptive legislation put in place. Congress, I move.
Thank you, Delegate. Thank you. Can I call on a seconder for the motion? Thanks, Delegate.
President, Jim Malone, Dundee Trades Union Council, supporting and seconding motion 71. As a young firefighter, like all of my colleagues, I was routinely exposed to contamination. Studies have shown that firefighting in the late 70s and the 80s was particularly hazardous. Exposure to heat, asbestos, carbon monoxide, fine particulate matter, volatile organic compounds and flame retardants was deemed to be part of the acceptable risks of the job. Incredibly, the risks were increased by the PPE we wore then and the fire suppressants we used in your clothing, forever chemicals, and foam, AFFS, used in many fire scenarios. As a retired FBU official, I was given the honour of representing and supporting FBU comrades after the Grenfell atrocity. The testimonies of the sisters and brothers who fought the fire will stay with me for the rest of my life. To consider their health is now compromised by their exposure to the contaminants at Grenfell makes me extremely angry. The UK and Scottish governments must commit to properly fund our fire services and invest in facilities and equipment to protect firefighters. They must also have legislation to ensure compensation for all affected firefighters, past and present. I second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, colleague. That was motion 71, support for the FBU Decon campaign. Please note the General Council recommends support. I will now move you to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Any against? Any abstentions? Motion 71, support for the FBU Decon campaign is carried. Congress. I invite Willie Docherty, Chair of Standing Orders Committee, to move the 4 Standing Orders report. Willie.
Congress, Willie Docherty, Chair of Standing Orders Committee, presenting the 4th Standing Orders report. Congress, tellers have distributed 2 emergency composites. Emergency composite T, welfare benefit cuts, covering emergency motions 2 and 6, and emergency composite U, legal protection for gender identity and trans rights, covering emergency motions 4 and 8. Please also note that the 2 emergency motions previously noted that were still being considered by standing orders have been deemed not to be competent and won't be debated. With that, I move the 4th Standing Orders report.
Thanks, Willie. I now take it that Congress agrees the report. Thank you. Congress, your newly elected General Council is named in the General Council report. All new General Council members have been emailed the detail of tonight's meeting. If anyone is unsure, please come to the front of the hall and see us, and we'll give you directions to the meeting. Congress, delegates, that concludes the business of Day 2 of the 128th Annual Congress. Thank you all for your contributions in the debates today. Please bear with me. We will start tomorrow's Congress addressed by Savannah Taj, General Secretary of the TUC Cymru Wales. Please follow this. Following this, the private session will begin at 9:15 prompt. The STUC Treasurer will deliver their report and move Section 1 of the General Council report. This will be followed by the debate on Motion 1, Constitutional Amendments from Section 1 of the agenda. All visitors, observers or members of the media are not permitted in the hall during this private session. The vote on Motion 1, Constitutional Amendment, will be taken by a card vote. Delegate leaders must ensure that they have their cards to participate in that vote. If any delegate leader has not yet collected their vote or misplaced them, please visit the STUC reception desk for assistance, leaving the hall this evening. Congress, 1 minute please, 1 second, a couple of seconds and I'll let you go. At the end of the private session, we will continue with Section 3 of the agenda, Economy and Industry. There are again a number of fringe events taking place this evening. Details can be found in the Congress programme. Delegates note that Unite Fringe at 5:30 is no longer taking place. There will be a bucket collection as you leave the hall for Paisley and District Trade Union Council of their 150th anniversary as you leave the hall this evening. Thank you. I close Day 2 of Congress.